morning, Rob. How are you doing today?
Hi, it's good seeing you. I'm doing really good. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing well. It's evening here in Poland, but it's afternoon in the
Yeah,
US, right?
I'm on the East Coast, so about 4 o'clock. So hopefully my day will be wrapping up soon.
Okay. I'm gonna try not to keep you too long on the camera.
No,
Can
I'm
you
glad you're
introduce
here. Don't
yourself?
worry.
Can you introduce yourself? Can you tell everybody what you do and what is your position? You obviously work for the ConnectWise for the service leadership team. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm Rob Bufano, and I work with service leadership under the ConnectWise brand. My official title is Director of Solution Provider for Service Leadership. So, high level, people are like, "What do you actually do?" Or basically, well, what we do is provide guidance on basically first best practices for solution providers, and also heavily introduction on our benchmarking platform. So, basically, if I'm a solution provider, if I want to improve performance, they come to us and they ask for basically best practices and tips on what they should be doing. And that's kind of where I do almost a consultation piece on the benchmarking, also Sleek, which you've, I think, discussed about prior episodes.
So I've heard right. You are the expert in this financial benchmarking and all this goodness that people can, when they are trying to improve their operations and how they run the business, they can come to you and you are the expert, right?
Yeah, I mean, luckily I have some industry expertise in that field. Before being part of ConnectWise and service leadership, I worked at an MSP when I first started. I was very small. We were about 4 million, pure play MSP. And by the time I had left, we were about, I think, 40 million we had grown to. We had done about 4 or 5 acquisitions. We'd taken on a private equity sponsor. And my position was head of finance. So as you can imagine, I'm really into the numbers. And I've used the product, which is really helpful, and understand going from a small organization to a large, what steps you need to take, and also what metrics really kind of move the needle.
I love your experience, and I want to really take advantage of it. There are many value-added resellers that would like to increase the number of or the amount of services, or the ratio services to hardware ratio, and get into the managed service program. So it looks like you are the right person to advise the value-added resellers what are the steps that they should take to be more successful in the MSP world.
Yep, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, that's really important. And it's a common, I would say, request for a lot of product resellers. Like, how do I improve performance? How do I get more services? Because I know that's where the value is in most organizations. So, high level, some things we always describe in this kind of when you are selling services, you have to change your mindset where you can't be selling managed services to all your clients. You have to actually be more selective who you bring on. And we have a concept called target customer profile, which is, say, a certain kind of user type. So let's say I'm selling to a user type of 100 to maybe 200 users. My goal is to sell just to that. And that's really important versus what we see a lot of product resellers where they try to sell to many, many target customer profiles. So the 10-person shop to maybe 1,000 or 2,000 shops. So it's important to kind of really straight line and understand who my target customer profile is. And when I start doing that, I can really pay attention to how I'm actually being profitable. And then in a little bit, I'll kind of show you some high level statistics, which really we kind of zone in on if I'm trying to run my business, what I really care about.
So you actually have a tool or a concept or a framework that allows people to understand what type of customers they have and which customers are going to be a great target for the managed services and which customers could be transformed into the managed services concept.
Yeah, that's the one benefit in our extra other product, which is Sleek. That provides you that guidance. And then once you have that guidance on who I should be selling to, you kind of then understand, am I actually profitable at? And I look at my financial numbers. So kind of both products between Sleek, again, which you had spoken about before, and the benchmarking, almost like a 1-2 combination on improving overall financial performance, we find. I can say
Okay.
we've also done consulting agreements with many large VARs that have done that transition from being just a product reseller to now moving on to more service-based operations by taking our advice on understanding what really moves the needle.
Okay. Let's focus today on the benchmarking. I think as much what I know about SLI, correct? SLI.
Yep.
It's a kind of a framework that allows people to compare themselves to maybe some other partners in the industry, there is a certain structure and a framework that people adhere to. Can you guide me through to this kind of a concept of this SLI? How does it work? And how people should be kind of getting on this platform if they wanna join this kind of a revolution to move to the MSP? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. If you wouldn't mind, I have a PowerPoint deck that's ready. If you don't mind, if
Oh
I
yeah.
can pull that up, or I think it'd be very helpful. I'm a very visual kind of guy, especially when I'm talking numbers. I think it's easier to visualize versus me just speaking. So it might add some value to our conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Let's bring the slides in. Oh, there you go.
Ah, perfect.
Yeah.
So luckily I have a deck ready to kind of explain. I think it makes it a lot easier. So I wanted to first discuss a concept we call predominant business model, which is simply, what kind of business you're selling to. And in this call, again, especially for product-centric firms that are selling product resale, that is one of our 10 predominant business models. Again, what's really important is we are trying to benchmark apples to apples. So as one of the comparatives, if I am a VAR, I want to see how the best performing VARs are. I want to make sure I'm comparing against just them. From a managed service provider, I want to benchmark just the top managed service provider. So this right here, I'm not going into huge detail, but there's a list of our 10 predominant business models. So people have an understanding, you're not just benchmarking against everybody. We do have that data, but really when you want to zone in to improve performance, it's more important you understand your peers.
So what you do is within this framework first is you're trying to understand, or whoever is getting into this framework is trying to understand what predominant business model they have before they start comparing themselves to others, right?
Yes, exactly. And let me take it back real quick. And then basically high level, if I'm a VAR or a product reseller.
How do you determine which business model you have? I mean, when I talk to a lot of resellers or VARs, they obviously would probably fit into the product centric, but they do some technical and project services, I would assume. Or maybe they are more of an infrastructure balanced.
Yep.
How do they determine this?
Well, luckily we just do it systematically where the numbers are what they are. We don't let people choose what they think they are. And basically the concept is we look at your last 4 quarters or last year of revenue. And if you have over 60% of product sales, that means you are considered a product reseller or VAR, and we're comparing against those types of companies. If so, basically over 40% of services, then you fall into those areas in the green. And then what we do is we look at, do you have one line of business, like say break fix or technical projects, or maybe managed services to say a couple, that are 10% larger than the rest? So we find is a lot have, majority are managed service providers. So of all their services, they have more than 40% services, and managed services 10% more than all the other lines of business. That's the majority of where their sales are coming from. High level is what I'm saying. And once we see that, then we kind of compare and peg those best in class metrics towards that.
So first of all, if you want to kind of start using this tool and the system, you need to upload your data to some kind of a framework, some kind of a, I don't know, tool or whatever.
Yep.
So you upload your data, and then based on the data that the partner will upload into your SLI tool, it will be automatically recommended or determined for them. Are they product centric or technical services guy or project services guy? What is the predominant business model? It will kind of come up from the analytics very quickly. What kind of a company? I mean, you can look in the mirror and you can check what kind of company you are. Yes, based on the methodology that you have developed over the years, correct?
Exactly. That's what's kind of nice is there's no how should I say determination that you decide what you want. It literally the facts are put into our system, looking at your revenue types, and gives you that insight. And then again, even if you want to transfer to other kind of predominant business models, we still can provide that journey how to get there. And I think firstly, what's important is you start a starting point of wherever I'm at now. Let me get profitable. Once I'm profitable, then I can start making that journey into other areas potentially. So again, if I'm making no money as say a product reseller, my goal shouldn't be yes, I want to sell my service, but it shouldn't be I just make that quick jump. First, I have to make some quick edits and improve my overall financial performance, get stronger, then I can make that transition. I think that's really important.
That is really interesting, Rob. So it looks like, the framework would allow people to understand what kind of a company are they, okay? Are they product-centric technical services? And then it will help them to understand within their expertise, okay, area of expertise, they will be able to understand whether they are doing good, better, what are the things that they do well and not do so well.
Exactly. That's basically it. So
How
as
do you define?
an example, sorry to cut you off, is if I'm a product reseller or a VAR, and I'm doing not a really good job of product margins, and product is your largest area where I can make profit. I'm not going to magically now sell more service and all of a sudden my project margin will get better. I still need to fix that issue. So we kind of point that out. Let's fix this product margin issue. And then obviously once we feel we're in a better spot, we can help you transition to the services at the same time, potentially.
Because even for the product-centric companies, you will have some kind of a comparison with others that will allow the partners to understand, hey, my margins are this, but here are some of the other. Are you going to compare to actual other companies, or how does it work?
Yeah, luckily we combine them all. And actually, let me show you the next slide, and I'll kind of walk into that where how this information is coming into. And the first thing I want to discuss is we want to compare against this concept called best in class. So really what happens is, let's say we had 100 solution providers. We'll say that they're product centric because we're really zoning on that. We had 100 product resellers in a room. And we basically stack rank them on overall profitability. What we would do is the top 25% of those first 25 based off profit will be considered best in class. And what we do is that 25th company, whatever their profit level is, that would be the entry point to be a best in class provider. So this little example I'm showing here, that 25th company would have around 13.5% profit. So around 30% profit they have component.
Profitability, not a gross margin, right? It's a very big distinction. We are not talking about just the gross profit margin from the deal.
Exactly.
It's the actual profitability of the company that you're checking.
That's important because we have a lot of sales expense. If you don't consider that, you can actually be losing money, what we find. So it's important, not just gross margin, but actually what is your bottom line profit? That's really what we care about. And then basically what we do is when we find those top 25 companies, we take the average of all their statistics. So again, what's going to show is maybe the top 25% of those 25 companies of the product resellers have around close to around 25 or 26% gross margin on product. So that's that best in class metric I should be comparing to. And we do that for all the metrics. I think we have potentially over 80 KPIs that we're providing, which is the averages of those top performers. And that's really what we're trying to strive to make sure we are a top performer. And then what we do is take the same concept of the remaining 50 or below 50, I say, is the median, and the final is the bottom quartile. And that's the way we're kind of looking at it and really breaking out that financial information.
So you will be able, in the tool, you will be able to basically take your results and you will see whether you are pretty much like the top 25 guys or maybe pretty much like the bottom 25 guys.
We do really make it. I mean, I have another slide on labor, color by numbers. If I'm in green, doing good, best in class. At yellow, doing okay. A median, or in red, that's a problem area. So we try keeping it very simple. I know there's a lot of numbers, but when you look at color coding, it's like when you're driving. Green is good, and keep going. Yellow, let me caution. Don't want to run through that light. And red, I better hold the brakes and stop and kind of investigate what's going on here.
Seems very logical. Seems very logical to me, Rob.
What I wanted to show you is high level, why would we compare against being a top provider versus a lower provider? This is some statistics we ran for, again, product resellers in Q4 of 24, so this past quarter. What we found is the top quartile, that top 25% had the highest amount of overall total revenue growth at close to around 9%, and recurring revenue growth, which, again, we're trying to grow those managed services at 16%. Really what's a little concerning is we see the bottom quartile that actually had about 6% decline of total revenue and only 6% growth of recurring revenue. So if you include inflation, that 6% of recurring revenue is probably not much when we're talking net 3%. So it shows that those top providers are having a large profit, but they're also growing their companies. So not sacrificing profit to gain revenue, which is really important that we see. That's same with VARs, MSPs, same concept for all solution providers. And then what I wanted to show you is, again, drilling down on the difference of profit. Now what we're going to see here is the top quartile is best in class. On basically the threshold again was that 13%, but on average, they had around 18.6 versus that bottom quartile. Fortunately, they lost money on average, about 8.8%. So what does that really mean? For every $100 coming in, the best in class or top providers made $18.60. And the bottom quartile, for every $100, lost 80 cents. So that's a swing of almost $19 going from a top provider to a bottom quartile provider. So it says a lot about, again, different levels of profit. And then also what we find is top quartile typically not working harder. Bottom quartiles aren't less smart, but we find the difference is they understand the best in class. What are those best practices, which are in sleek, but also they understand what I need to benchmark to see the best top performance, which is really helpful. Give me one sec. And then also wanted to show, again, there's a lot of data, but I want to show the significance of all that what we have. Because when people do benchmark, they see how I make more educated decisions. And all this is really, again, showing is over the last 16, 17 years, historically, the top quartile are always pulling in. They're doing great, pulling in anywhere from 15 to 17% profit. Medians anywhere at 4 to 5%. And the bottom quartile, unfortunately, are not doing very good. They're in danger, where they're losing money mostly. That says a lot, where, again, 25% of the industry potentially could go out of business if not making significant improvements in their business.
And it's pretty stable. There's no major jumps, right? It's a pretty stable situation. So it doesn't look like the value-added reseller business is significantly improving over the years.
It's not. I mean, towards the bottom, it's pretty consistent year over year. Sometimes we see some trends, but normally you're going to see those same rates because you understand what the best practices are. So for the bottom or the top providers, you're going to be in those run rates of profit. Normally is what we say.
Interesting. What is your kind of a demographics of the data that you have in here? I know that you cannot disclose how many companies are here, but just roughly, is it like hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of partners that are analyzed through this process?
Well, what I can share is we've been doing this for, I think, north of 20 years. And we do have the largest worldwide database across the board for all different predominant business models. Again, we have MSPs or solution providers, I should say, that are potentially $1 million, and we have VARs that are anywhere from in the billions. So luckily, we have a wide gamut in all geographies across the board. So that gives us a lot of information to kind of really drill down and see what those best practices are. And also, we find that no matter what geography you're in, typically we see the best-in-class performance is the same across the board.
So it's possible to even drill down and see, like who's the best performing, like what's the best in class in the UK for a $10 million company or something like that, right?
In our benchmarking platform, we actually do an annual profitability report, and we go to that level of demographic in terms of each geography. Yes, and we can see, again, if I'm in the UK, what are those top providers doing versus if I'm in, say, APAC or potentially North America. We have that data as well, which is really helpful. And what we see across the board is not material difference, but it is important for people to see, realizing they can achieve these higher results no matter what geography they're in.
Great tool. Looks like a great tool. Mm-hmm.
So let me show you a couple more things if you don't mind. I think it'll be helpful to kind of get some further insight.
I love data. I love insights. So whatever you can share.
I love data too. So what I want to show you, again, the first concern on if people were to benchmark is they feel like it's a big change they need overall to their business, but not necessarily. They can definitely go in and change their chart of accounts and do that setup. And, if recommended for you can do that. But we know for some solution providers, there might be, tax purposes. They don't want to do that, or maybe they just find that's a major uplifting on their current chart of accounts. So what we advise is, make that switch. Try to at least do a mapping process, which I'll say here is take your chart of accounts and simply map them to ours. And if you do that, you can potentially have what you have in internal accounts, but also have this management reporting, which really drives basically higher results. I think that's really
Okay,
important.
so you're keeping your accounting, but then you have your management books that you are trying to align with this framework, the SLI work framework, and that will help you to do the comparison. So you still run your books, like your accounting, your tax for the tax purposes, whatever. This will help you. It's a. I know this from my corporate life. The management books were many
Yeah.
times different than the accounting books, because the management books would look at the business side, not at the for the purpose of the taxation, and could show a different dimensions or different dynamics of the business. Get it? Totally get it.
Yeah, exactly. And again, you have the option to convert all your accounts, but if not, we understand that can be complex. And again, run both ways. So that's the kind of the benefit we have across the board. And the other, again, slide I want to show you, sometimes people think, even the mapping process, is it going to be taking me so much time to do? Is it very convoluted? With this, I'm not going to go detail about all these accounts, but really, what we're showing is high level. This is all you need to map your accounts to. And I think, again, this is maybe 30 accounts, because most solution providers, if you're a large organization, you might have 1,000 chart of accounts. You don't have to worry about mapping all those to have another 1,000 accounts. Simply high level, product, are you selling product resale, selling cloud, or hardware as a service? On the service side, is it, break fix revenue, project revenue, managed service revenue, or potentially if you had a colo center, be shared services. High level, those are the revenue accounts we really care about, and that's what we deliver in terms of margins. So it's not as complicated as people think it really is. It just takes a one-time process to do, again, that mapping, to understand where all my accounts kind of line up. And once I do that, I'm going to get the additional benefit of benchmarking, which is really important for people to kind of start getting into. So then I want to discuss benchmarking to best in class. So we kind of hit upon it. We talked about the term of that best in class, that top 25 performers. But those that do benchmark basically get 4 outcomes once they've inputted all their data into the system.
Mm-hmm.
The first one will be, and as I talk, if you have any questions, definitely ask them, because I want to make sure I address anything that I'm not explaining well, I should say. So the first one being your company's previous 8 quarters and year-to-date information. So you get those year-to-date comparatives and your last 8 quarters of data. So you can see whatever trending that might be there to see if it's good or bad results.
It's going to be your own data, but in the standardized view, right? What we have discussed is like your management book. So, we know that you've been looking at your own kind of a data, your own performance in a certain way. That would be just another point of view that has been vetted through 20 years of experience by service leadership organization, trying to understand what is the best point of view on your performance.
Exactly. That's what we'll be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
You got your financial, you're comparing against your historicals. Then this second point is you're going to see the industry averages, so across the board. So this is always a good data point, I always say, because you're going to see what the industry is doing. This is going to have VARs, product resellers, MSPs, project shops, potentially applications. It's going to have everybody. So that's good data point again to see. But really, what we're going to zone in on, or we find the most important, will be this third, which again is that best in class. Which I
hold on. So the second report, the second point of view is take your 8 quarters of data. Okay, this is what are the trends, what are the situations going on, and then you have the view of what's going on in the industry. So you will be able to compare your trends with the trends in the industry, how different companies are shifting their revenue, whether the industry is growing, whether your group of companies is growing, whether the group of companies that are similar to your predominant business model, what do they do and how the situation is changing, right? It's a kind of an industry view. Just doesn't matter if somebody is good or bad or indifferent. That's how the whole picture looks like. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You get that comparative, exactly. Yeah. And then the third point is the top quartile is best in class. Again, that's what I really care about, because I'm going to compare my results against the top performers. And I want to see how I'm doing. So again, if I'm a product reseller, I'm going to see how the top 25% product resellers are doing and what their statistics look like. And then when we do that color coding I mentioned, and I have an example which I'll show you, it's going to compare against that best in class. And that's really important to kind of have an idea what I'm looking at.
But here the message says top quartile best in class for all members. Is there a possibility to drill down, into your kind of I can understand if I'm a VAR, okay, and I run a certain profitability. We know that managed service providers or balance infrastructure balance services providers are way more profitable than me. So I'm never going to make it to the best in class. But maybe if I compare myself to the value-added resellers, I'm actually doing pretty well.
Yeah, exactly.
So
And you'll get that
the drill down is possible, right?
Yes, exactly. There's the drill down to kind of see that, see how I'm comparing it to them. But also, if you want some of those statistics, if you're in certain groups, we have the ability to show you, say, managed services as well. Really, what I was holding on though is start with your predominant business model. Let's do that comparative, because that's really like your peers, and we want to make sure we're driving high profitability there first. That's really important. And then finally, the last comparative is if you are into, say, a peer group, or if maybe you're working with a consultant that has other peers in their combined group, you can see their results as well. So that's important to know. Again, I'm not going to, if I benchmark, I'm not going to see random companies, groups, reports. It's only if I'm in a peer group or something that we've stated, okay, we want to see those comparatives. If that's the case, you'll see those comparatives against them as well. You'll see their individual company, but also the group report. But if I'm just benchmarking solo, you won't see that. So there's a confidential area that we have in place. You don't have to worry about that as well. I think that's important for people to understand.
So the group members, if I understand, so if you are forming a group within, and I know that there is yet another dimension that we didn't bring to those conversations yet, which is the peer groups concept.
Yeah.
So if you belong to a peer group that is kind of a working together on this platform, then you will be able to see the performance of your peer group and compare yourself to your friends, from your group. So when you are discussing actions and activities that you should take to increase your performance, to improve your performance, that's another report that you can check, correct? The progress.
Exactly. An example of that is service leadership. We have our own peer groups, and we have some of our basic peer groups, and again, maybe 10 VARs in a room, discuss some best practice. We're also looking at their financials, and either someone like me doing a deep dive on the financials, or other members questioning their results, which is, again, good data points and good understanding of where I need to improve.
Makes sense. Mm-hmm.
So what I wanted to show here is, and hopefully it's not too small, but if I actually input the data, what am I actually looking at? And this is, again, going to be a good view of a management report and showing basically 8 quarters of data. And people can't see, at least they get the concept. I think that's really important. And what this is going to show you is basically 8 quarters of data for your revenue, but the high level lines of business. It's going to, again, show you, how my product sales are doing, my managed services, my projects, that level of detail. Not super high level. I mean, high level enough, but not too down into the weeds. I think are really important. And it's going to give me some insight year over year. How have I grown? And again, if I'm looking at this company, they grew around 1% of total revenue year over year. So I think that's an important data point. If I'm a VAR, I want to see, am I growing my products or am I not? Or is it because potentially I'm lowering services? High level, I can get some judgment of what's my overall trends. That's pretty important. You might have that in your financial system, but it's good to look high level, something like this, that's easy digestible for multiple executive members on your team, which I feel.
So this company is not making much of a changes. It's basically a product company with same amount of revenue, not growing, pretty much flat, but also with the same structure of a revenue.
Exactly. So this is an example, again, probably like around 80% of their revenues come from product, which is pretty traditional for many VARs. And you see, again, what we saw is a good example due to the fact the industry is down this past year. People saw that there was a little shrinking of the economy potentially, and product sales did shrink. So staying flat. What I would harp upon someone like this is, could you have at least grown the managed services part of your business or project services? So maybe we're keeping products safe and they're at the same level, but we're growing some of the more material parts of our business. Unfortunately, that was not the case, in this example. Again, like I talked about, what I'm looking at this showing year-over growth or decline, which would be in this top left-hand side, which is really good, again, for a simple report. You can get that understanding. You also have the ability to kind of drill down further and get a full detail. I mean, if there's value in looking, in my product sales, what was it? Computers, scanners, servers, you have that ability to go deeper if you want that. If not, at least high level, we have this kind of reporting. And like I said, it shows the 8 quarters trend on all those major lines of businesses, which is helpful. Another chart that is really important is gross margin. Again,
Mm.
I might be growing revenue, great, but am I getting any gross margin? Again, what I would care about is this past example. I think we had 1% growth of revenue, but I think in this one it shows gross margin grew around 7 or 8%. So that's actually telling me I'm moving in the right direction. Potentially, maybe I'm doing a better job with service margins. Maybe I get some service efficiencies, or maybe I'm pricing better on my overall product, which is a good sign. We're going to, in this report, shows the overall trend again on margin percentage in dollars by most of your major lines of business, which is really helpful.
So this company is doing about 14 point. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it now. Mm-hmm.
And then really what you want to see zoning on is maybe I'm increasing or decreasing revenue or gross margin, but what is my overall gross margin efficiencies? And that's what I'm trying to highlight here. So hopefully you can see. If not, I'll kind of talk at the concept. Really, what it's doing is comparing this individual company's product resale gross margin, which I think on this is showing around 11-12%, but I compare it against that best in class. And the best in class, I think, when we're looking at this last quarter, was around 29 points. So that's a difference around 18%, or almost for every dollar coming in. Basically, the best in class makes just 18 cents on product versus, say, this company. That's a lot of opportunity. I think that's a potential opportunity for this company to understand their overall pricing. I'd start questioning, is it that you're not pricing quarterly in terms of your sales, or you're not working on the front end or the back end where you need to look for more vendor rebates? There's a lot of opportunity there for them. So again, if I'm looking at this as a manager report, I would kind of zone on there. Now, if it's 80% of our business, how can we drive this product margin? Even if I'm not trying to be best in class, can I gain some margin points? If I'm pulling in 12 points, can I maybe next year go to 13 or 14? That have material impact on overall profitability. That's an important way to kind of look at it, and this way I kind of coach.
And and this is really very, very interesting, because I see that this company is running at about 14.5% in Q4 2024, which is mainly due to the fact that the majority of their business is coming from the revenue. And that really tells, like, hey, number one, you could improve you're really, you're good at selling products, good, okay? But there are still opportunities to improve your product performance.
Mm-hmm.
So you can potentially fund, because the best in class product performance is around 30 points. Well, the best in class in the infrastructure services is 43 points. Okay,
Yeah.
you could potentially improve your product to get the funding to get more into the infrastructure services space. Okay, build your infrastructure services, invest to get to the next step, and then look for other opportunities: managed services, application services, professional services. See where those pools of money are that will allow you to grow the value of your company, the profitability of your company. Mm.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like you just hit on. Again, if I'm looking at the company, we talked about product margins, but that second line that I've kind of highlighted is showing those service margins, which you referred to, which is around best in class is 42, 43%. Again, this report, I think this company is pulling 20 points. So that's, I think positive. 20% opportunity. Instead of thinking it's a negative, let's think it's opportunity there. If we get another 20 points, we're best in class. Even if we can't get 20 points, can we maybe get another 5 points next year? Let's try to move the needle. I think that's the way people should try tackling. You can't probably get best in class in one day, but let's tackle it and move improvements. But at least I know where I'm looking at. I know how I'm off and what areas I need to concentrate on. Because to your point, their overall blended gross margins at 14, 15 points when best in class for VARs is around 34. That's the way they should be managing the business, saying, okay, we have 20% potentially opportunity in overall gross margin if we move the lever on product gross margin and service gross margin. That's important to understand. And what I'm doing here is just trying to walk you through, if I'm looking at a report, we show revenue, gross margin. The next part is operating expenses, which is your sales and marketing, and basically G&A. And the first concept to look at is, what is that growth rate as well? Right here for this company was about 1%. So gross margin is growing faster than their operating expense, which is good, but a lot of times that's not the case. But I want to see that year-over-year average. And then this report's going to give you the same 8-quarter trend on those operating expenses. They'll show the quarter-over-quarter growth or decline, but also the comparison against the best in class, which I keep harping upon. Hopefully after this, this video, people understand best in class and sticks it with them, because that's really what we're trying to drive at. If I'm looking at this scenario, again, if you can't see it, at least we'll kind of talk of it. The first statistic we're looking at is best in class sales expense as a percentage of gross margin. And we see the top performers around 19%. What that means is for every $1 gross margin, the top performers spend 19 cents in sales and marketing. This company is almost double. The final quarter, they're at like 39 or 40%. So that's telling them they're spending double more than they should. Obviously, the first issue might be they're not bringing enough gross margin. That is something first to evaluate. Are we bringing healthy gross margin, or we have not done enough cross-sell? That's important. And the other one might be we have ineffective salespeople. Or unfortunately, maybe we have too much staff on the sale front, or maybe they're just not being productive. Things to kind of evaluate. Or maybe they're not selling what they should be selling, not selling high margin deals or high product margin deals. That's what you can kind of start evaluating when you have the numbers in front of you. See, how do I improve my business?
So the job that they deliver in comparison to the cost that they are to the company is just not, the ratio is not right.
Exactly.
So they either need to be increasing the margins or selling higher profitability products, or they need to be paid less.
Exactly. And that's could be another thing. It could be variable compensation where they're getting too much of a base, they're sitting pretty and not working enough. It could be that you need to have more incentive-based compensation. That's another thing to evaluate. And the metrics though tell me you're not going to be too profitable because your gross margin's low and you're spending too much on sales, which is really sales and marketing, which is really the highlight here. And that same approach goes for G&A. Again, same concept. Best in class is 40%. They're around 57 to 60. So then take it down a notch. Every $1 gross margin, top providers spend around 40 cents in G&A, and they're spending 57 cents. So both expenses, operating expenses, are higher in this organization. It's another problem where we want to drill down and see what's going on further. And then finally, we have a chart on profit, EBITDA, and adjusted EBITDA. And then for this company, the fact that their operating expenses didn't increase as much, so their overall profit was around 12% increase year over year. But you can kind of see it, is that moving in the right direction? For a lot of companies, that won't be the case. And that's the figure in the top left-hand corner. I think it's going to show that 8-quarter trend on financial results for your profit levels. And then zone it in, what people care about is, what are those top providers' profit? For best in class, for product resale is around 14.5%, so close to 15% profit this past quarter. This company, this last quarter, was 1%. So again, maybe they increased some profit in a pure dollar basis, but they're not being very efficient. If they're only getting 1% to the bottom line when the top providers are pulling a 14, after I have to take a look at what's going wrong. I kind of did a quick little analysis. It's gross margin issues from the product and service, and also you're spending too much on operating expenses. That's high level. There's more to do. Obviously, you have to kind of do a deeper dive to see what's happening, but I know I have some issues at least. Which this is telling me is I'm potentially understanding where I'm racking up against. What's nice about benchmarking is you're not running a business on gut and feel. You're not just looking at the bank account saying it's going up a little bit, so I guess I'm doing a good job. You actually see, well, maybe you're doing okay, but can I do better? Can I obviously perform like a top performer? Instead of just looking at my bank account grow a little, can I make it grow a lot? I think that's the way people should kind of be understanding when I actually benchmark. That's kind of the benefits.
So you have, can you go back for a second? You have two benchmarks here. One is EBITDA, the other one is adjusted EBITDA. What's the adjusted?
It's a common question we get. So basically, on the adjusted EBITDA, what we have to do is compare apples to apples. So what we do is take the owner's compensation and normalize it by saying, if I have one owner, how much do they make? And if they were to leave the business, how much would it cost to bring somebody to take that role? So an example, let's say I had a business owner who was making $100,000, we'll say. If they were to leave the business, or, potentially I acquire their business, I'd maybe have to hire someone that was making $200,000. So we go from 100 they're making versus the normal rate is 200. That's about $100,000 difference. So what I need to do is reduce their earnings by $100,000 to kind of adjust it to normal rates. And that's kind of the process we do in terms of adjusted EBITDA versus EBITDA. And again, EBITDA is basic profit. So we're doing an adjusted profit calculation.
Or the other way around, if the owner is paying himself too much money, I could go the other way around. But it makes total sense.
Sure.
Yeah,
If an owner pays himself too much, you might get a benefit. Like let's say the owner is Canary paid themselves $1 million because they want to get paid a lot and they have the ability to afford it. Necessarily, if I brought someone in, they're not going to make $1 million; they're only going to make 200. So I get a benefit of 800K. But what's good to know is, at least from management reporting, and normally if I'm making $1 million, I might show no profit, but I'm actually probably profitable if I normalize what I should be making in the market. So it works both ways, which is helpful.
Yet another example of standardization of the benchmarking, right? To make sure that you take out of the comparisons, the decisions, the individual decisions that are made by the owners that could be tied to some personal choices that they are making, right? It's just to make it industry relevant, if you will. Very interesting. Yes.
So what I want to show you here is, in a financial report, I give you some graphs. We also have a detailed report that provides all those data. And this is just a little snippet of gross margin, because I think gross margin is what we care about. And again, we kind of do that color by numbers approach. And what this is providing me is, I had mentioned this, but you're rolling 4 quarters of your information. So if this was a company, I can see what their overall gross margins are and gross margins for last year. They see the individual last 4 quarters as well.
Mm-hmm.
They see last year to date and the current year to date, which I referenced.
Mm-hmm.
That industry average, again, that industry average is going to have VARs, product resellers. It's going to have also MSPs, product, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You see, that's a good data point. Then what I'm going to zone in on is that best in class, which I keep talking about, that top 25%. In this scenario, it's the top 20% VARs and what their statistics are. And these high level will match what I showed in those other charts, but this gives a further breakdown. And initially, I think we showed that overall product was around 29.6, but now in this report, I say how much that's the cloud gross margin, how much is hardware gross margin. I can dig a little deeper if I want it, which is helpful. And the way it's simply doing is, in each scenario, in each period, it's comparing, it's that best in class, like I mentioned. If I'm in green, doing a good job, I'm with 10% of that best in class. Yellow, I'm anywhere from 10 to 25% the best in class, probably something I should spend some time to kind of investigate. And then anything red, it's a major problem area, something that should be taken care of probably as soon as possible, because I'm over 25% that best in class ratio. So again, color by numbers, where should I concentrate on? I would look at reports, say, where am I red? What do I care about? And then work my way through the report.
If I understand, just to clarify, if I understand correctly, this is a 10%, not a 10 percentage point. So it's going to be 34 to 30. It's actually within the 10%, right?
Yeah. So an example, if it's 34%, 10% off of that will be what, 3%, 10% of that 34. So if I'm 31 or higher, I'm best in class. So if I'm 31, or I guess it'd be like close to 7 or 8% off that. So I'm going from 31 to 26, which is that 10 to 25% off. I mean, the yellow, and then anything lower than that 26%, I'm referring again this overall gross margin, that would be then in the red.
It's a really good scorecard. It's a really, really good scorecard. It allows to see where the problems are, and where this obviously cloud services resell. It's one of the big red spots in this.
Exactly.
And last year was bad, So this company is improving, generally speaking, but still working.
But then again, the good thing about this tool is it provides you that guidance and see how I'm kind of stacking up what you're trying to do. And again, there's a lot of data. We understand running your business is very difficult, but high level, I put the information and see what are my top priorities. That's what I always kind of tell people on. And then if we have a little time, I want to go over a couple simple metrics as well. Maybe some takeaways for people to kind of really get some value on it. What we find is, again, in a report, we have north of 80 metrics to look at, but high level, what I really want to match our business on is the service multiple wages and the sales multiple wages, which are two statistics that really can improve financial performance. Biggest reason being your service people are going to be obviously your largest fixed costs. I know, again, if I'm a product reseller, product costs might be large, but if I stop selling product, it's going away. I don't have any product costs, it's variable. So I need to understand how to manage that fixed people cost scenario. And the second being sales expense, your salespeople, because again, they're costly and you're investing probably a lot in sales because you want to grow your business. So how do I manage that? And that's what we want to kind of zone in on. And like I refer to, service people, your biggest fixed cost, how do I know I'm doing a good job of managing that part of the business? Am I being profitable on my services? That's where we're trying to get at. And do I need to make some improvements? It's really a simple concept. It's basically service gross margin, high level. We're trying to keep it a little simpler. And really, I just need three areas, or three things, I should say, data points. What is your service revenue? How many service people do you have? And what is their average W-2? And I believe in the UK, it's P60. If I'm wrong, sorry about that. Basically, I'm trying to get at is, what are you paying your people? That's all we care about.
Okay. I don't know what W-2 or P60 is, but I understand it's their payout, right?
Exactly.
The salary? The salary,
yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
And then basically, I'm going to a little quick example. Let's say I am a product reseller, around 50 million of service revenue. I have 200 people, on an average, they make around 100K. So maybe I have someone making $50,000. I have someone making 150, but on average, it's around $100,000. At the end of the day, I'm paying $20 million in salaries to my service team. I simply divide the 50 million by the 20, it tells me I have a multiple wage around 2.5. So that's kind of a healthy ratio to look at of, if I'm at a 2.5, I'm probably pulling around a 50% margin. I'm not overstaffed and I'm charging enough. I'm in a good spot. And that's the way to look at it, because that is something we get a lot of people asking, am I overstaffed, or do I need more revenue, or basically, how do I improve performance? High level, this is just telling me how to manage the business. And I sometimes like to reverse engineer this calculation. And how you do that is, again, let's say I had $50 million service revenue, but divide it by 2.5, it would tell me I could spend 20 million on my service team. It's like a salary cap, basically, on what I can afford to pay my people to be profitable, would be where my desired margins. And then I work my business towards that. Again, simple concept, but basically for every $1 what you pay your people, you generate $2.50 of service revenue. If I'm doing that at about a 50% margin, which is crazy to think about. If I reduce it simply by 25 cents, which doesn't seem like much, we're talking a quarter, right? But if that quarter compared to $1 of basic payroll cost brings me down to 40% gross margin. Crazy.
Rob, are those just examples, or is this an actual, kind of a? I mean, in a reseller world, making a 50% margin is kind of unheard of. So is this just an example, or are you using some kind of a
reference? This is real life. Yeah, this is real life. Typically, we see is, if you're doing a really good job of services and you understand who to sell to, and you're managing another area for a lot of resellers is they don't do a good job of understanding their overall project team. They have a lot of project, and you're sitting there idle bench. That reduces their overall margin. But the more they get to understand how to kind of utilize that, if you're pulling that off, you could pull a 50% margin and get that 2.5 W-2. We've seen a lot that we worked with.
I just think it's very interesting that something that is considered bottom quarter, it's around 30% margin.
Yeah,
I think in the reseller world, I would assume it's a very, very well kind of a it's a well-performing company. Really.
Yeah. What we find is, again, understanding how to change the mindset where, again, if I'm happy with 30% margin and maybe I'm only pulling in 10 points to the bottom line, I'm happy with that. Well, you might think that's great and high performance, but we see other people in the industry that can pull 50% margin on services and pull what we said 50% to the bottom line. So I think that's the power of this tool, is understand the knowledge of what is a high performer. Again, someone might say or think they're doing high performance, but if I have this comparative, I actually know what I should be shooting for. And then also what I coach people on is, say if I'm at 30%, let's say, maybe next year we can get to 35, or if my W2 is, this multiple's 2, can I get to 2.1? Try to make improvements, small improvements. That will drive performance in your industry, in your overall company. And what I'm trying to show here is in the full report, we have this information. That's a huge data point we see here, just and we see that here, right there. So those comparatives, which is important to see.
Okay.
And unfortunately, this company, they actually made improvements a little bit in Q3, but overall, again, looking at the rolling 4 quarters, they're at 1.8, which again, I think we looked at their service margins were not very healthy. They were very low. So that kind of correlates exactly to this low percentage number here versus the percentage of gross margin.
So the utilization of the service organization is not great.
Exactly.
Either paying people too much or they're not selling them enough. Something is off.
Yeah, either you're overpaying too many people, you have too much high-paid techs, or maybe you would have a lot of techs on hand. There's not much billable. Maybe the bill utilization is, say, 25 hours a week when yours should be 35, or whatever that might be. We see that across the board as well. So it could be a couple of factors. I mean, obviously this would be an indicator. I need to take a deeper dive on what's going on. But at least now at this point I've addressed and see there's an issue here. What do I do as next steps? Again, just highlighting, we also have this in a nice, beautiful chart, just kind of show the importance of that, which we see here, that best in class, and how they stack up for the 8 quarters. So they can see that trend, am I moving in the right direction? Again, if you're not best in class, I say, well, are we trending upwards? That's what I want to see. If that's the case, I like the way you're moving. If you're trending downwards, we have an issue. We need to address that. And then the final statistic I want to go over is the sales multiple, which is a similar concept just for the sales team. Really what we care about that is you're going to want to invest in sales. We get it. You want to grow your organization, but we want to be smart about it and not just waste money. Again, similar concept. And this one, though, we take your total gross margin. So that's going to be for product and service. So how much total gross margin are we generating in the organization? Then we're going to ask how many salespeople you have and what are you paying them? That's the way to look at it. And this is another simple example here. Let's say at 8 million of total gross margin, I get 10 salespeople making on average 100K. So we have $1 million we're paying our salespeople. So that on average is around 8. So that tells me we're probably being efficient in terms of generating enough gross margin, and our salespeople are doing a good job. And potentially we're not overstaffed. So by looking at this. Again, same metrics here. We're seeing here $8 for basically $8 of gross margin we generate for every $1 I'm paying a salesperson. That best in class. Median's $5, and unfortunately the bottom is about 3 to 1. And that's again another statistics we see in the report book, which is right here. And this organization we see, unfortunately, they're on the rolling 4 quarters around a 2. So it's again probably a combination that their gross margin is very low. And they're probably overstaffed, let's be honest, or at least they're not producing enough, unfortunately. But something, again, that could be addressed. So we kind of hit upon it when we were looking at the financial review, but we see it again with this high-level concept if I didn't want to do a deep dive in this organization. And again, also the sales.
There is a big difference still between how resellers, how important the sales organization is for the resellers. When I look at the resellers, how they are typically structured, there are a lot of salespeople and very few services people on the reseller side. It's the other way around on the MSP side, where you have a lot of services people and not so many salespeople.
Yeah. So the interesting this on the MSP side, their best in class is probably about a 10. So they have even higher numbers, kind of like you pointed out. The reason for that is generating more gross margin. So, I mean, I think it's fine on the reseller side if they have a lot of salespeople, but again, are they being productive? I think that's really the importance. You have to make sure that they're being productive and generating enough gross margin. If not, then that's going to put your scenarios out of whack. And also, hopefully, they're selling to the right clientele. If they're selling low margin managed service deals or low margin projects, you're going to have an issue. Maybe they're generating revenue, but not overall margin, which is really important. And that's how people should be compensated on, is growing that margin.
And there's one more thing, and I wonder whether you came across this conversation or this question, Rob. Just like you took out owner's compensation from the adjusted EBITDA, for many of the resellers, and I guess for many of the MSPs, the best salesperson they have is the owner.
Yeah.
Do you do any adjustments for that, or do you account for that somehow?
Yeah.
Because that could be a big factor in this conversation.
Yeah, for smaller organizations, that's going to be much big factor. The fact that if you're owner led and you haven't really invested in a salesperson. So what we tell them, our advice is when you input your data, put your compensation in your role. So if I'm, again, say an owner and I spend 50% of my time doing, say, executive level work, 50% of my compensation would be in C-level executive admin. And say I've spent 50% doing sales, closing deals. I'm not on the phone calling, but I'm closing deals when that's needed. I'd put that 50% of my salary as a sales expense. So then we just have it hopefully bucketed in the correct area. Because theoretically, if I wasn't doing that job as a salesperson, I'd bring somebody else in to handle that role. And that's what we want to kind of compare.
Sorry for that.
No, I like that. It's a good sound. So I only have one other thing to show because I know I've been talking for a lot, but high level, I did all this review. What do I care about? When I'm looking at these low benchmarking ratios, normally what I do is then go into what we discussed with Dan Scott, my colleague, Sleek. But this is, there's many different action steps, but high level, what I would have done is first say, if my service multiple wages is low, I probably have to first talk about installing a certain technology stack on a certain client base and get that tech standard. So I mentally talked about that target custom profile. High performing MSP solution provider understand that one TCP, and they sell a certain amount of existing product just to those clients. So from a VAR, I'm going to sell to all commodity products to everybody. But when I'm selling just to my MSPs, I have to make sure I really identify that target customer profile and set just a certain amount of tech standards across the board. That's really important because then I can do better service when I have standardization. And the final one being sales multiple wages. If it was potentially low, I take a deep dive, understand, how's my sales team look? What we find is when you have a hybrid model of potentially someone doing the hunting and the farming, what happens is they're going to prioritize which is easy, which is just constantly farm. What happens, you're not going to bring on new accounts. So what we see of the best service providers typically is I'm going to split that role out. Have an account manager dedicated to the existing accounts, drive as much gross margin as I can on them and cross-sell, and have someone who just simply hunts and brings new business on. And the more you can split that out, that sometimes brings higher results. A lot of times there are other factors, but high level, these are just examples. We are looking in terms of benchmarking and then going into Sleek to get those best practices, which I want to just highlight so people have an idea.
You bring actually a pretty interesting view here. Hunters should have this this wages multiple much lower than the farmers as well, because they are typically going with a very aggressive pricing.
Exactly.
And they will be generating a much lower revenue. So so it's really important that you dive into those individual metrics and understand, how many, what is the multiple for the hunters, what is the multiple for the farmers, because it could be like you are in a growth mode. Like one of my friends on the private equity side, from the investor side, he told me that they are using a rule of 40 to judge how different companies perform, and the percentage of your growth and your profitability has to be 40.
Exactly. Combination of two. Like if I get 20% growth and then I had 20% EBITDA, that rule of 40 typically they're looking at. They
That's good, right? If you fall below that, then it's not good. And falling below means either your growth is not, like you're not growing very fast and you are still not having a great profitability, or maybe you're growing super fast but you're losing money and you're not making the 40.
Exactly. It's kind of a great perfect spot where you're being efficient or have a great service delivery model, even say, and profitable, but we're also growing the company. So you want to see both ends of that. That's really important.
Yep.
And so in terms of me, that's basically what I wanted to review. I think that was important to just give a high level over benchmarking, but at the same time, if there's any other additional questions, I want to make sure I cover any insight that you thought of maybe I didn't cover.
No, it's a very comprehensive. We spent almost an hour discussing that, and I really enjoyed that. So there's a lot of numbers, and it looks like, how big is the overall report? How many pages?
So it's
you
a
get this kind of a report.
web-based. It's a web-based program now. Thankfully, we've gone to the new century, but we literally made a conversion about a year ago. So now, if you're going, you basically have 10 high-level charts you could view, and then a full detailed report, which is has maybe 200 lines of information. I guess that's the way to look at it.
Okay, because I know that some of the MSPs get on a regular basis like a report they can scan through, which is like really focus on what they do and how they do.
Yeah.
And I know it's a very comprehensive tool.
Yeah.
Rob, thank you so much for the great overview and for the good discussion. You are obviously very knowledgeable. I'm looking forward to kind of getting certified on this concept in the near future, because I think it's extremely comprehensive. It's certainly something that can be applied to a lot of businesses, and as we're expanding as we're seeing a lot of VARs trying to move into an MSP space, this kind of a benchmarking tool will be extremely helpful for them.
Oh, I think it's extremely helpful. And the fact that you sat here to listen to me speak for an hour about numbers makes me feel very confident you're going to pass the exam when you take it.
Keep your fingers crossed. First, I need to go, but first I need to go probably to IT Nation Europe, which is in 2 weeks. And I'm looking forward to ask more questions to experts like you at the event to learn from other partners that are going to come and probably share the knowledge, because I know that the MSP community is extremely open and willing to collaborate and discuss. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I'd like to say also, I mean, I think anyone who does attend, they're going to really enjoy. We have a lot of service leadership presence, and again, they can ask questions, whatever that's out there, which is helpful. And again, I also want to say thank you for having me on. It's great having discussions overall on what we do.
Thank you so much. Speak to you later then. Bye.